Hi, welcome to my video on squaring a monomial square root radical or radicals. Square of a monomial square root radical. The square root of a squared is the square root of a times the square root of a, which is the square root of a squared, and it gives you an a. Let's check. Root 2 squared is root 2 times root 2, and root 2 times root 2 is root 4, and the square root of 4 is 2. Root 5 squared is root 5 times root 5, which is the root of 25, which gives you 5. Root 7 squared is root 7 times root 7, which is the root of 49, and the square root of 49 is a 7. So you'll notice if you take a radical and square it, the radicand underneath the root, which is a 2, is the answer. So the square root of 5 squared is 5. The square root of 7 squared is 7. So the square root of a squared is an a. Practice. If you know that pattern, then you don't have to write it out, but just to keep it going. Practice means pause the video, work out the answers, and press play again to see if you're right. So root 3 squared is root 3 times root 3, which is root 9, which gives you 3. Now, if you know the pattern and you have it memorized, the root of 6 squared is a 6. The square root of 10 squared is root 10 times root 10 root of 100, which is 10. The square root of 15 squared is a 15. And just to practice, the square root of 11 squared is root 11 times root 11, and the square root 11 times root 11 is 121. The square root of 121 is 11. Again, if you know it, the square root of 13 squared is just 13. Now we have another one. What about x root a all squared? So that's x root a times x root a, and that gives you x times x is x squared. Root a times root a is a, so it gives you x squared a, or you could say ax squared. So let's practice. Simplify each. So 2 root 3 squared is 2 root 3 times 2 root 3. So 2 times 2 is 4. Root 3 times root 3 is 3. So that gives you 12. And 3 root 5 squared is 3 root 5 times 3 root 5. 3 times 3 is 9. Root 5 times root 5 is 5. 5 nines are 45. So notice you can multiply 2 by 2 to get 4, and you get the 3. So it's 4 times 3 is 12. But sometimes it's nicer to write out 3 root 5 times 3 root 5 and get the 9 times 5 and get the 45. Keep it safe. Know what you're doing. Again, practice, simplify. We have a negative 5 root 2 times negative 5 root 2. So if you wrote that down on the side somewhere, then you could say negative times a negative positive, 25. Root 2 times root 2 is 2, so that gives you a 50. And negative 4 root 10 squared is a negative 4 root 10 times negative 4 root 10. Multiply the integers, 16. Multiply the roots, root 10 times root 10 is 10, gives you 160. And practice means pause the video, work out the answers, and press play and come back. And 4 root 3 squared is 4 root 3 times 4 root 3. 4 times 4 is 16. Root 3 times root 3 is 3, gives you 48. And a negative 2 root 7 squared is negative 2 root 7 times a negative 2 root 7. And negative 2 times negative 2 is 4. Root 7 times root 7 is 7. 4 sevens is 28. Number 3, 6 root 2 all squared. 6 root 2 times 6 root 2. 6 times 6 is 36. Root 2 times root 2 is 2, and that gives me 72. Number 4, negative 10 root 5 squared is negative 10 root 5 times negative 10 root 5. Negative 10 times negative 10 is 100. Root 5 times root 5 is 5, and that gives me 500. And number 5, 2/3 root 18 squared. Well, we can leave it like that. We can simplify root 18. I'll do it two ways. We can go 2/3 root 18 times 2/3 root 18. Make that an 18. So 2/3 times 2/3, 2 times 2 is 4. 3 times 3 is 9. And root 18 times root 18 is 18. When I multiply the fraction as over 1, 9 and 18 goes 2, so we get an 8. And if you wanted to, you could have done 2/3 root 18 is 9 times 2, so that's 3 root 2, and we square that. So that's 2/3 times 3 root 2, so that's the inside. So if we cancel that, let's cancel the 3's, so we get 2 root 2 squared. Because when I simplify root 18 as 3 root 2, then I'm going to simplify this by BIDMAS. They cancel out to give me the 2. And now that gives me 2 root 2 times 2 root 2. 2 2's is 4. Root 2 times root 2 is 2, so it gives me an 8. So we go this way or that way, your choice when you come to working these out. And you can't simplify root 15, so I got a negative 1/5 root 15 times negative 1/5 root 15. Negative, negative, positive. 1/5 times 1/5 is 1 over 25. And root 15 times root 15 is 15. And that's over 1. 5 into 15 goes 3. 5 into 25 goes 5. So I get 3/5 as a final answer. Let's continue. More practice. The more practice you do, the better you get normally in math. Let's deal with the order of operations and simplifying. Let's do some examples. When we do the order of operations, we think of PEMDAS, or some people might use BIDMAS, PEDMAS. Instead of using both, I'll use only one of them. And I'm going to use PEMDAS, PEMDAS. Okay. And inside the brackets, I got to do P is for parentheses, B is for brackets. Root 5 is simplified, 2 root 3 is simplified, so we get that done. We got to do the exponents. So root 5 squared is root 5 times root 5, which is 5. And we get 2 root 3 squared, so you can put it down on the side like this and square it. So you say 2 times 2 is 4. Root 3 times root 3 is 3, so that's 5 and 12. Remember, I square this out, I get 4 times 3. You have to multiply this to get 12 and then add. So 17. And B, I can't do the inside, but I have to do the bracket. So PEMDAS, I got to do the exponents first. So negative times negative is positive. Root 7 times root 7 is 7. And that gives me negative 14. I have to square before I multiply, according to. And PEMDAS, PEMDAS. Inside here is already simplified. Inside of this one is simplified. This one is not simplified. Well, we can do that. 3 root 2 times 4 root 3. And 24 is 4 times 6, so that's a 2 root 6. So we have inside the root simplified. Now, let's see. Inside the root are the same as inside the brackets. So we have to do the exponents first. So we have to go 3 root 2, 4 root 3, 2 root 6, and I have to square, so I'm using the exponent. Root 6 squared is root 6 times root 6, which is 6. Now we have multiplication, division, left to right, so I have to multiply these two first. So 3 times 4 is 12. Root 2 times root 3 is root 6. So that's done. And now I have to look at this. Multiplication, division is done. I have to do addition, subtraction from left to right. That's a root 6, and that's a root 6. That's a 6. I can only add these two, or subtract these two. So that's a 14. Root 6, subtract 6. Because that's not a like term, so I can only add the two of these together. And I got to do PEMDAS again. Just write down the PEMDAS, P-E-M-D-A-S, keep track. I have to do inside, and I noticed that inside here they're both root 2, so 4 plus 1, that's a 1 there. So the inside becomes 5 root 2 squared. So the inside is done. Now I have to square it. So that's 5 root 2 times 5 root 2, and that's 25. Root 2 times root 2 is 2, so that gives me a 50. And it's all done. There's no additions or subtractions. Practice means work these out, then press play to come back to get the answer. Do one at a time. There we go. Now, I got to write down PEMDAS on top of this. P-E-M-D-A-S. Simplified, root 20. I could change the root of 20. Okay, let's change the root of 20. Root 20 is a 4 times 5, so 20 becomes 2 root 5. So we have the inside of the root of the bracket simplified. No exponents. We have to do multiplication and division left to right. So we have to multiply these two before we subtract. Multiply. 4 times 2 is 8. Root 5 times root 2 is root 10. Subtract. We have to multiply these two. 2 times 3 is 6. Root 5 times root 2 is root 10. Both of these are like radicals, so 8 subtract 6 is 2, so it's 2 root 10. Notice we have the multiplication done, then we only have the subtraction left. Okay, again, P-E-M-D-A-S, P. Okay, we have root 3, can't simplify. Root 5, you cannot simplify. But we can do the root of 18. Root of 18 is 9 times 2. So that's a 3 root 2. So we have inside the root or the bracket simplified. Now, we have that done. We have to do the exponents next. So I see two exponents here. Root 3 times root 3 is 3. Root 5 times root 5 is 5, so the exponents are done. Now we have to do multiplication, division, left to right. So we have to multiply this and do addition after. So that's a 15. And 7 times 3 root 2 is 7 times 3 is 21 root 2. And multiplication, division is done. And we can't add these together, so we leave it like that because they're not like terms. Number 3, PEMDAS, P-E-M-D-A-S. Cannot do that, can't, we can't. None of these can be simplified because root 30 is 3 times 10, which is 2 times 5, so 30 has no perfect square factor. So we have to do the exponent next. So 2 root 3 times 2 root 3. And I have to leave the other ones alone. So I'm just writing down the other one. So I had to do my square first. And now, when I do that square, I have to multiply or divide left to right. So I got a multiplication. So let's do that. So 4, 2 times 2 is 4. Root 3 times root 3 is 3. 3 times 2 is 6. Root 5 times root 3 is root 15. And I have, I multiply these two, and I have a negative 4, and that's a 60. So now I got to simplify the root of 60 first. So I can leave 4 times 3, 6 root 15, and 60 becomes 4 times 15. So that's a negative of negative 4, and that's 4 root 15. And now we have to multiply before we add and subtract. So that's a 12. That's already done. And I have to multiply, so that gives me negative 16 root 15. Notice I have to keep going with this until it's fully simplified. Now, I have to, that's done. That's okay. Negative and negative is a positive, so it's 16 root 15. 12 is not like, that's a root 15, that's a root, so we can add the two of these together. So 12 plus 22, 6 and 16 is 22 root 15. Always obey BIDMAS in the order of operations. I keep emphasizing it. Very, very important. Now we have another one to do, a couple more. Last page. Find the value of x as a radical in simplest form. Notice what we have here is a right triangle. So a right triangle, we have, that's a squared plus b squared. We can call that a, we can call that b. That's c. C is always the hypotenuse in the Pythagorean. So c squared equals a squared plus b squared. So that means that 5 root 2 is my c. C is the opposite of the hypotenuse. C is the opposite of the right angle, which is the hypotenuse. A is x, and b is 4 root 2. So we can have Pythagorean with radicals as well as integers. And 5 root 2 squared is, let's write that, 5 root 2 times 5 root 2. That's 25 times 2, so that's a 50. You don't have to do all the workings. You can do the workings for this on the side like I did. 5 root 2 times 5 root 2. 5 5s are 25. Root 2 times root 2 is 2. You get a 50. That's an x squared. And we have a 4 root 2 times 4 root 2, which is 4 root 2 squared. That's a 16. And root 2 times root 2 is 2, so that's a 32. Again, I did the workings for this on the side. Leave it there for your teacher, which is if it's a quiz. And now we can leave the x squared there and move to 50 minus 32. We could move the x squared over here and make it negative, move the 50 over here and make it negative. But if you leave the x squared where it is, that gives us 18 x squared. So x equals the square root of 18. If x squared is 18, x is the square root. And the square root of 18, what is 18? Well, let's think about 18 is 9 times 2. So that's 3 root 2. So we have radicals done. We can use the Pythagorean. Now, we got x as, this is a 3 root 2. Next question, find the perimeter of the triangle as a simplified radical. The perimeter is to add up all the sides. So it's a 5 root 2, add on 4 root 2, add on 3 root 2. The perimeter is to add up all the sides. And notice that all radicals are the same, so they're like terms. So 5 plus 4 is 9, plus 3 is 12. So that's 12 root 2 as for perimeter. We're not looking at the length as in centimeters, we're just looking at the numbers. So if that was centimeters for all these, this would be perimeter in centimeters. The area of a triangle is, the area for a triangle is half the base times the height. So if you have the triangle, it looks like this, and I got a 5 root 2, and I got a 4 root 2, and I have a 3 root 2. Well, this is my base, and this is my height, because this is a right angle. And when you have a right triangle with a right angle, then that is the base, and that's the height. So the area of the triangle is a half. The base is 4 root 2, and the height is 3 root 2. And we multiply the radicals first, or we could, that's what I do. I multiply these two first. And when you do, 4 times 3 is 12. Root 2 times root 2 is 2. So that gives me 24. Now I take a half of 24, it's 12. And the area is square units, but we're not worried about that. I could have taken a half of 4 root 2. I could have done this. But this is 3 multiplications. So if I multiply a half, you can only multiply the 2 of these at any one time. So if you want to multiply a half by 4, and that gives you 2, that gives you 2 root 2 times 3 root 2. And that gives you 6 times 2, and you get the 12. But if you do it this way, multiply your 2 radicals first, and then do the half after. But it's your choice, not mine. You can only multiply the half by 4 root 2, and then multiply by 3 root 2. Or, again, multiply these two, get an answer, and then multiply by half. Your choice. The volume of a box is the length times the width times the height. So if we say that's the length, and that's the width, and that's the height, then the length is 3 root 7, the width is 2 root 3, and the height is 4 root 6. Again, we're not concerned with measurements as in centimeters or inches. Volume is cubic, but I'm just looking at multiplying the radicals. So if we multiply all these, I can multiply all the numbers, 3 times 2 times 4. Now I got a root 7 times root 3 times root 6. So if you multiply all these, you get all these numbers. You get 6 times 4 is 24. Now notice when I do this, I couldn't multiply this and get a large number. What I'm going to do is write down 7, and that's a 3, and a 6 is 3 times 2. That means, if you think about it, I have 2 3s, so I put down 3. 7 times 2 is 14, and that gives us 72 root 14 is your final answer. I could have multiplied all these out. 7 times 3 times 6, that's 21 times 6 is 72, and then simplified it. But I would have had a 36 times 2. So it's better when you're multiplying these numbers to break them down individually, and then you can see it much easier than get the big number and then breaking it down. But it's your choice, not mine. So I prefer to do it this way, but again, it's yours. And that's more practice on working out the simplifying the radicals, monomial radicals. If you like my video, click the like button, the subscribe button, and the notification bell. And write a comment on my video if you wish. And visit my math website, www.mathfullyexplained.com. And there you have a section on me, my degrees and teaching experience. Section of video talks about the strategies I'm going to use to help you learn your math. The content section has the topics and the number of videos on those topics. That's on my YouTube channel, Math Fully Explained. And black font is what's online right now. And the red font is the content that will be there in the near future. Thank you very much for viewing my video. Bye-bye.